Hey everyone, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're taking this incredibly fascinating journey to compare the preservation of two of the most influential ancient scriptures in human history, the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. We're going to look at how these massive textual traditions were actually formed, how they survived across millennia, and the absolute detective work historians use to date them. Oh, and before we really get going, if you like this video, please hit like button and subscribe to our Data Prabodhini YouTube channel. Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our structural roadmap for the episode. We'll be looking at 1. The myth of binary origins, 2. Parallel timelines of scripture, 3. Relics of silver and stone, 4. Acoustic precision versus writing, 5. The matrix of oral memory, and finishing up with 6. Faith versus historical evidence. Let's kick things off with Section 1, the myth of binary origins. So you see this debated all over the internet, right? Which was written first, the Christian Bible or the Bhagavad Gita? It's a completely natural question to ask. But as you'll see from the evidence, framing it as this simple race to a finish line, that actually completely misses how ancient literature worked. Here's the deal. Neither the Bible nor the Bhagavad Gita was just written by a single person overnight. They are absolutely not singular, monolithic books composed at one exact moment in history. Instead, both of these scriptures represent the culmination of centuries of complex redactional layers, oral transmission, and just gradual compilation over time. The Hebrew Bible, for instance, is really an anthology that reflects dramatic geopolitical shifts over 1,000 years. All right, moving to Section 2, Parallel Timelines of Scripture. Let's look at the actual historical chronology, side by side. In the late Bronze Age, so around the 13th to 10th centuries BCE, we see the earliest roots for both. You've got early oral Hebrew poetry, like the Song of the Sea, and the earliest Rigvedic hymns being compiled in India. Fast forward a bit to the 6th and 5th centuries BCE, the Hebrew Torah is being compiled from various sources, while over in India, Panini is standardizing Sanskrit grammar. Then, by the Hellenistic period, 4th to 2nd centuries BCE, the Torah gets translated into Greek, and the core composition of the Bhagavad Gita is fully integrated into the Mahabharata. It's fascinating because they really developed in tandem across the ancient world. Which brings us to Section 3, Relics of Silver and Stone. Let's put on our detective hats for a second. Finding physical evidence is tough because written scripture is incredibly fragile. Take a look at this number. 27 by 97 millimeters. That is literally tiny. It's the exact dimensions of the Ketef Hinnom scroll, which is this little silver plaque rolled up like an amulet discovered in a tomb in Jerusalem. It's over 2,600 years old, dating all the way back to the Kingdom of Judah. And what makes a tiny piece of silver so monumental is what's etched onto it. It contains the priestly benediction from the Book of Numbers. This means this specific blessing was known and used by Jews in Jerusalem before the destruction of the first temple. To put that into perspective, this tiny artifact predates the famous Dead Sea Scrolls by centuries. No way, right? Now let's fly over to ancient India to look at the epigraphic evidence there. This is the Heliodorus pillar in Vidisha. It's this massive, monolithic sandstone column erected by Heliodorus, who is actually a Greek ambassador from Taxila. He embraced the Vedic faith and built this pillar to honor Vasudeva, or Krishna. And this is where the detective work really pays off. Carved right into the octagonal base of that pillar is this quote, "3 immortal precepts when practiced lead to heaven: self-restraint, charity, consciousness." Scholars identify that as a direct quote from the Mahabharata and a core ethical teaching of the Bhagavad Gita. It proves these devotional concepts were well established by the time this Greek ambassador visited around 113 BCE. Moving right along to Section 4, Acoustic Precision versus Writing. And really quickly, before we look at why ancient India actively rejected writing, if you like this video, please hit like button and subscribe to our Data Prabodhini YouTube channel. Okay, let's define a piece of academic jargon so we're all on the same page. Terminus antecem. Basically, it means the absolute latest possible date something could have existed. For the Bhagavad Gita, scholars know it must have existed in its current form by around 100 CE at the latest, simply because it's quoted by the philosopher Asvaghosha right around then. But the text itself is obviously older. The huge challenge in dating it exactly is that ancient India didn't rely on writing, which is a massive contrast. The ancient Near East really prioritized physical documents and scribal portability, like that silver scroll we just saw. But ancient Indian sages, they actually viewed the written word as corruptible and kind of unreliable. They believed the true power of a sacred text lived in its acoustic reality.
To them, the precise vibrational frequency of its vocalized phonetics was pure, living, and dynamic. Writing it down was seen as a totally inferior medium.
So how did they pull that off? That brings us to Section 5, the matrix of oral memory.
Now you might be wondering, if you don't write a text down, how on earth do you prevent it from changing over thousands of years? Well, ancient Vedic scholars solved this by engineering something called Ganapatha. Now what's really interesting about this is that it's a mathematically dense recursive recitation matrix. It literally functions exactly like a modern digital checksum used in computer science to detect errors in data transmission.
Let's break this matrix down. Students didn't just memorize the text straight through from start to finish. They memorized crazy permutations. Samhitopatha is just your normal poetic flow, words 1, 2, 3, 4. But Kramapatha anchors neighboring words, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 4. If you drop a word, the pair just breaks. Jatapatha braids them backward and forward. And the ultimate level, Ganapatha, weaves them into an intense mathematical sequence. Any dropped syllable or mispronunciation was instantly detected.
Let's actually look at how this sounds with a real Sanskrit example. Take a verse starting with Triambakam Yajamahe, Sugandhim. Step 1 is Triambakam Yajamahe. Step 2 goes backward, Yajamahe Triambakam. Step 3 goes forward again, adding a word, Triambakam Yajamahe Sugandhim. By mathematically braiding the words in this bell-shaped pattern, the sequence was locked perfectly into the mind.
And this discipline was so absolutely rigorous that it didn't just lock in the words, it phonetically froze the text in time. It perfectly preserved ancient pitch accents, the udita, high, anudata, low, and swarita, falling tones. Spoken Sanskrit actually lost these musical pitches by 500 BCE, but because of this oral matrix, Vedic chanters still use them perfectly today. Just mind-blowing.
Finally, Section 6, Faith versus Historical Evidence.
So there's an inherent tension here. For the Bhagavad Gita, the Hindu tradition relies on astronomical calculations that date the events all the way back to the dawn of the Kali Yuga, around 3139 BCE. Traditional scholars hold that the text is a divine revelation preserved with absolute fidelity since then. On the flip side, mainstream historical critical scholars rely on linguistic and archaeological analysis to place the final composition much later, between the 5th and 2nd centuries BCE.
But listen, this tension is not unique to India at all. We see the exact same dynamic with the Hebrew Bible. Traditional sources date the biblical exodus from Egypt to the 15th century BCE. However, the physical archaeological record shows sparse evidence for a mass migration at that specific time. In both cases, deeply embedded cultural memories often operate on a completely different timeline than empirical physical evidence.
Which leaves us with a truly provocative thought to ponder. When we look at these two incredible traditions, we have to ask ourselves, which is truly more permanent? A fragile written text etched on silver and buried in a tomb, or a mathematically rigorous acoustic sequence living, breathing, and echoing in the minds of human chanters across millennia? It really changes how you think about history, doesn't it? Thank you so much for exploring this with me today. And one last reminder, if you like this video, please hit like button and subscribe to our Data Prabodhini YouTube channel. Catch you next time.